Well, I usually read from a text, not because I'm nervous, but because if I don't, I'll leave something out. Academics don't like to leave stuff out. It's really an honor and a privilege to have been asked again to be here at the opening of an exhibit at the museum. I want to thank Rabbi Greenberg and Leslie Freed for this opportunity. The work of the Alaska Jewish Museum is a signal contribution to, to the life of this city and this state. And it speaks to the commitment of responsible Alaskans to the principles of equality and social dignity, as we have heard. The museum, Leslie, all who have worked with her and all who have supported this sterling achievement are to be commended in the highest terms. Senator Murkowski, Mayor Berkowitz, it's marvelous to see you both taking time from your schedules to be here to help celebrate the achievement of what this museum represents and all others who have supported it. I want to say a few words about Harold Ickes, Secretary of the Interior from 1933 to 1946. It was soon after Kristallnacht, in early November 1938, that Ickes generated his notion of resettlement of persecuted European Jews in Alaska. It was the coalescence of several threads of Ickes' character and personality and his direct experience. Just 3 months earlier, the Secretary had made his one and only trip to Alaska. Throughout the Great Depression, Ickes had worked with a remarkable new agency, the National Resources Planning Board, an extraordinary federal initiative. It was the only national planning agency we've had in American history. It was a policy body that brought together business leaders, social scientists, and legislators to investigate ideas over a vast array of areas: land management, natural resource development, but also industrial structure, population, transportation, and more. This national board oversaw regional planning groups, one of which was the Alaska Planning Council. That council, the board's Alaska experts, determined that it was time for a coordinated Alaska economic development strategy, 1938. After this trip, 1938, Ickes adopted the board's conclusions and became especially determined to advance Alaska's economic evolution. He was particularly keen on attracting intelligent, imaginative entrepreneurs who would provide leadership, attract investors, create jobs, and thus generate still more population and still more leaders. After Kristallnacht, this determination of Ickes for Alaska became married to a second thread in his mind, his lifelong humanitarianism. Ickes was a Bull Moose Republican from Chicago, a Theodore Roosevelt progressive Republican. He'd worked in Chicago on such projects as the elimination of child labor, a guaranteed living wage for industrial workers, suffrage for women, the commission form of municipal government, and a host of other progressive issues. For a time, he was president of the Chicago NAACP. He believed passionately in human equality, and he hated discrimination and segregation. He was an outspoken critic of racial persecution, defending and supporting those he saw being accused and maltreated. He despised anti-Semitism. Franklin Roosevelt appointed Ickes Interior Secretary in 1933 for political balance in his cabinet. What he got was a formidable reform politician that one biographer has described as irascible, honest, suspicious, committed to democracy and minority group rights, and hungry for power. Throughout his tenure, he criticized FDR for FDR's failure to provide support for anti-fascists in the Spanish Civil War, for not prohibiting shipments of vital supplies to Mussolini's Italy, and for the wartime internment of Japanese Americans, and other insults to human dignity. In retrospect, the marriage in Icky's mind of Alaska development and resettlement of European Jews seems perfectly natural, a perfect match. What a pity that the idea floundered on the shoals of American anti-Semitism and the resulting anxiety among Jewish and other groups worried about becoming too aggressive and too visible. Icky's support of Jews was not ephemeral. During the war, he worked openly with the Bergson group, Hillel Koch's Irgun-related cadre in the US that sought to raise awareness of the Nazi, Soviet, and nationalist murder of Jews, support that raised not a few eyebrows in Washington, D.C. Ickes approved of the 1943 Rabbis' March in that city, Washington, and of the We Shall Never Die pageant in Madison Square Garden in 1943, written by Ben Hecht. He also supported the War Refugee Board's call for an allied fighting force of stateless and Palestinian Jews. Harold Ickes believed deeply in naming evil evil and calling it out. For him, fighting the persecution of Jews was not just an anti-Semitism issue, it was also a humanitarian issue. As I've noted, he was passionately committed to ensuring universal human dignity. Though he stayed on for a while, when Franklin Roosevelt died in 1945, he resigned in 1946 to head a group called the Independent Citizens Committee of the Arts, Sciences, and Professions. He died in 1952. I like to think, on reflection, they would have agreed with my conviction, which I have stated here previously, that the victims of the Holocaust and of the massacres in the lands between the Oder-Neisse and the Dnieper before and during World War II have left mankind a precious gift, showing us how far we cannot go as human beings and what we must rise against time and again. In closing, let me thank Leslie and all who support her for this remarkable exhibit of an idea that should have happened and did not. Thank you.